All right, it's in between. Sean, go.
So is anybody going to watch the Academy Awards tonight?
Yes, my wife actually,
Now,
for whatever reason, actually threw out to me last night. I can't wait to sit in the theater with you and watch the Academy Awards. So yes,
all right. So is she wanted to do it to see what the reaction is going to be eventually when they get the Best Actor and Chris Rock? Is he going to give out the award because Will Smith's not going to give it out because he's not invited back? Because how that always goes is whoever won it last year gives the award the next
That's
year.
true.
So
Was he not invited back?
yeah, he's been banned.
Oh.
He can still participate within Academy voting, I believe, and whatnot, but which creates issues in and of itself. It's a good question. I mean, what
think
do you do with that?
you
I
have
think Chris Rock is
give
the
it-
right one.
Yeah, you have Chris Rock give it out.
So why does she want to do it? Obviously, it's no surprise to anyone listening to this or my two dear friends. I love movies, and Shelley loves sharing that experience with me, except she also gets mad at me because I'm like, it's not about art. It's about commerce.
Yeah.
That's all. It's one big fucking commercial.
Well, here's the deal. So, do you know what the real origin of the Academy Awards was? So, Louis B. Mayer was getting tired of actors starting to try to unionize and organize and not do what he wanted to do. So, he just said, I found out the best way to handle artists was to hang medals all over them. If I got them cups and awards, they'd kill themselves to produce what I wanted. That's why the Academy Awards were created. So it's just to get actors in line by giving them prizes, saying, "Hey, look what a good job you did! Yay, yay, yay!"
It's just
That's all
comes
it
down
is.
to it. It comes down to it that it's such a silly principle of
You're judging art.
judge art, which is entirely subjective
Subjective.
in and of itself, and then to deem one better than the other. Okay, Everything Everywhere All at Once is an amazing movie that made me bawl by the end of it.
I think I want to watch it for that, but go ahead. Sorry. To your point.
But it is, you cannot go and say that it's better than The Fabelmans, which made me cry too, from a standpoint of loving movies and seeing one of my favorite directors learning how to make. I hate it. I hate it with a passion.
Also, I don't understand how you can have a best picture, then also a best director, then also a best screenwriter. I mean, aren't they all the same thing? If you have a best picture, somebody had to direct that to make it the best picture. Somebody had to write it to make it the best picture. So aren't they all hand in hand? I mean, isn't it should be best picture means best actor? I mean, how does it work? How is it not everybody everywhere all at once together?
I was watching the Jaws Blu-ray the other day. It's one of my favorite films. I'll go back to it.
Was it because Spielberg and John Williams were on Stephen Colbert?
That may have been what put it in my brain. Jaws is, to me, is a film that when I just am wanting to take in how movies are made, I will watch that. Do you have that Blu-ray? The recent
don't have
4K?
No, I don't.
You should buy it because it has the classic "The Shark Is Not Working" documentary where it's old archival footage of them talking about everything, and then they've made a new one. It's too, I would say probably you're going to watch about 5 hours worth of people talking about it. But it is like two perfect documentaries about making one of the best films that's probably been made in the last 50, 60 years.
Did we talk about Lost Highway a couple weeks ago?
No, we didn't.
Oh my gosh. Okay, go ahead. I want to come back to Lost Highway.
That's in your back pocket, or
Now I forget, but with that, I forget why I was bringing up Jaws, but...
you were watching documentaries?
Going to the idea of the craft of making film.
We were talking about judging art.
Okay.
Yeah. You went to
And
Jaws
a director and a screenwriter.
But yeah, how's everything?
How's that?
Yeah.
And, you get into this, and how I remember thinking that as a kid when Spielberg doesn't get nominated for Jaws. How the fuck can you have this film that changed an industry
Again,
and get nominated for Best Picture? And there's footage of him going in there, and they're showing him on that morning. You're very young, and he's going, I didn't get it. And he knows he's not nominated. It's asinine.
well, this is what we've talked about in previous minutes. That's why you make the awards for movies that came out 5 years ago, not the awards that came out this year.
And it just needs to be achievement in filmmaking.
Yeah,
It doesn't need to be the best.
The best of whatever this year. It needs to be 5 years ago. This is a movie that we realize has importance now, or whatever.
I was just talking to my dad about it. My dad being 86 years old and is just suffering with a lot of memory issues. And we were talking about how silly it is, and he goes along with it. My dad very much, he raised me to love movies like this, but as I said to him, I don't really give a shit, Dad. I don't want to watch this. And I said, I go back to loving Orson Welles. How can Citizen Kane considered to be one of the monumental achievements in American cinematic history not win and lose to How Green Was My Valley? You know what my dad says to me? Mm-hmm. Well, How Green Was My Valley was a sweet movie. The sweet movie doesn't mean anything, right? So I hate the Academy Awards, but yes, we're going to watch it. And who knows, will Will Smith
referenced?
Come up? Most likely.
Oh, of course.
I don't think there's a way they can get past it. It's going to be in the
opening monologue.
Are you watching it?
I will record it, and it'll be one of those things where people will go, "Oh, did you see this moment? This moment?" And I'll just go, "Oh, see that moment." Boom.
Yeah.
I used to care about it more whenever I worked for Blockbuster, and it was like part of my job. Yeah. And when I was younger, and then afterwards, it's too much effort.
It has
to keep
lost
up.
its luster, kind of, especially with the YouTube world now, where you can just sort of, find, like you're saying, whatever you want. Richard, do you watch it?
No. We'll talk about it, and with the intention of watching it, and the evening will happen when we watch it. We'll probably watch The Last of Us. Maybe we'll DVR it and like fast forward to stuff. I would really like, hopefully, to see everything all at once, and Michelle Yeoh in particular win something. That would be worth it for me. The rest of the movies don't really have much impact or meaning to me. I'll recognize some faces. That's about it. Maybe hear something funny.
I've said it to you guys before. I use it as a benchmark for movies that I might have missed through the year.
I can see that, yeah.
And it's a map at that point.
Yeah.
But I don't really give a shit about it. And I know what I want to win won't win. So
it doesn't matter. And you're not participating in any betting pools or anything like that. So.
I a friend who does a podcast, I get asked every year to make a prediction. I gave my prediction list.
That's it.
Yeah. That's about it.
Gotcha. All right, so you were saying something about Lost Highway.
So Lost Highway was probably one of the David Lynch films that kind of hit me at a moment in my life where it just kind of became my obsession for easily a month or more, right? Where I just had to see this movie, and then eventually got it on VHS and watched it over and over again because for whatever reason it just spoke to me at that particular moment. And I was talking with my husband about it, and we were talking about a project, and I wanted to kind of go back and go over some David Lynch stuff. And so he bought the Criterion Collection of the Lost Highway. And it's trash.
Now that you go back and watch it?
David Lynch went in and to try and make sure that it kind of had the same elements, but taking it into such high resolution has made it look like I'm watching security footage and not actual film. Mm-hmm. And he was behind the process, and apparently it's got lots of accolades for this particular transfer of the film to this type of high definition stuff. But to me, it's lost all the shadows. It's lost all the eeriness. It's lost all the nuance to it, because it literally looks like you see somebody walk into a room and he does his grays and his darks, and everything is gray, and they talk. They just look. It looks unreal. It doesn't look. It looks like, again, security footage.
Right.
And I almost need to go and find a VHS and watch it that way, because I can't watch the collection.
You need to downscale it.
I do.
That reminds me of, and Sean will probably remember this, that one time with Star Wars, one of the transfers that they did the color timing so wrong. Do you remember that edition? Yeah,
that you could see all the matte lines.
The matte lines are 10 times worse. The moment when 3PO and R2 get to Tatooine and you can see the escape pod off in the horizon, the blue of the pod's door was like stark. It was like there's a big blue dot, and it was like the color timing was entirely wrong. But Lucas said it was right. I
remember the Millennium Falcon going into the Death Star, and you could see the matte lines like around popping in and out as the resolution got smaller and smaller. Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't see people that clearly. I don't see them that clearly in real life.
It's the thing about art, again, is that there comes a point when aren't you giving it to the public? Aren't you at some point saying, here it is, and now it becomes, I'm not saying it doesn't still become your art, but it becomes something where maybe you have to start realizing, oh, that was the art that I created. And, and Lucas has famously shit on Star Wars for decades now. Yeah. But Lynch, and I'm a little surprised that Lynch would go back and change things.
I am too. I'll bring it up with me next time so you can kind of look at it. Do you remember watching Lost Highway?
Yeah, I do. It was for me. It was not one of my favorite Lynch films, but a good film. And eerie. That's definitely I remember as eerie.
Very, very, very eerie. And he did a lot with darks and shadows, and this just exposes all of that, and it just looks. I'll bring it up.
Okay,
and
please
maybe
do.
you might think it's the greatest thing ever, but I was watching like this doesn't evoke any of the emotion that I had to begin with, because I feel like these people are walking. I feel like I'm watching them on security cameras talking.
I think I'm gonna now have to go look into it though, because Criterion to me is like
the pinnacle,
the best of all, because they don't fuck shit up. And
although I still don't understand why they did Armageddon. Criterion,
Did they do
there's
it?
a Criterion Armageddon.
they probably have their reasons.
I know, but anyway.
But they do such a great job. I'm a little surprised they wouldn't go back to him and say, even call him Maestro, something very respectful, but say no.
I mean, Chris was looking up the reviews. Apparently, it is highly rated. This new
Right.
transfer of it using this new kind of high definition, and I can't.
You're done.
Yeah,
You're out.
I have to bring it up.
That's always disappointing, isn't it? Whenever, especially something you revere like that, and then you see it, and it's like, what the living
Speaking
fuck?
of which, Jon Favreau was recently asked about the original editions of Star Wars and if they'd ever release them, and he's talking about, there's a generation, which is our generation, that would really want to see that again, to see the original stuff. But then there's a new generation that really just doesn't give a shit. Star
It's
Wars
true.
is a movie that they've seen re-edited with monsters in Mos Eisley and Jabba the Hutt meeting with Han Solo and all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't bother them.
That's where I do have a problem, though, because go back to Citizen Kane. Criterion, have you ever seen the Criterion version of Citizen? They finally got permission to do it. It is one of the most stunningly beautiful things, because the blacks, and that's in that film, that is very important. The blacks are steep. You see that the pools, we talk about these shots in this last week of stepping out of shadows in Citizen Kane. That's everything, right?
Yeah.
They do such a masterful job, and that's the way that's meant to be presented. And Star Wars needs to be taken back to that, in my opinion. Fine, keep your monster version. Why can't
Why can't you have both versions?
I want to go back. In fact, there's some director recently, and it was a pretty substantial director, who found an illegal copy of Star Wars, the original one. He's like, I screen it all the time. And he said, to me, seeing what they were able to do with
the 70s
basically
effects,
gum and tape, I want to see it. So, Jon Favreau, I know you listen to this podcast.
Release the tapes.
That's right. Give it to us.
I would, just from a fan standpoint, it would be nice to have access to that, to be able to look at it, refer to it, remind myself what I saw at 7 years old in 1977, and have that there. And I still would, if you want to, dress it up some and do other stuff, go for it. Great. I'll look at those versions too. But I have such a strong connection with the original that I would like to see it in that form, and recognize how good or bad or how silly or whatever it is. I want to be able to feel that.
Why can't you have that movie clean up the matte lines?
Yeah,
clean up the little problems that were there, but keep it the way it was.
Lightsaber stuff.
Yeah, keep it the way it was, but fix it, and then give me the bells and whistles.
Special edition.
Well, they should be on the same disc, right? It should be basically, hey, here's here's the 2023 version of it that we've done this to. Hey, here's what it really looked like back then. You can actually
DVDs,
compare
they
the scenes.
used to, and they do not do this anymore. You used to have like multi-angle. You remember you could actually switch.
Remember that.
Well, that's what you do with this movie. You have it playing the special edition. You have the original edition, so you could just switch back and forth between the two and see what they look like.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, please give it to me. And I hate to be the one that says it. Don't make Greedo shoot first.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Han shot first.
Okay, that gets down to, and that's, we talk about the character things within Planet of the Apes, and we talk about the evolution of Han Solo. Han Solo changes by the end because we've seen him be the classic stereotypical gunslinger. When you take that away from him, his evolution is diminished.
He's not the soul. He's not. Yeah.
He's not the wild cannon that Luke needs. Luke is the sweet farm boy. Han should be the gunslinger that is ready to torch everybody, that learns how to be a good person.
Well, we're going to pick him back up in episode 7 and
kill him off.
Well, go back and remind me how this starts off. But basically he and Leia have had a failed relationship, and they have a son that's now turning towards the dark side. Clearly, he didn't rise up over everything. He kind of reverted back to who he was. His scoundrel ways. But prior to that, so yeah, he should have been the gunslinger, because we see him never be able to come out of that mold. He never changes.
Yep.
He tries and can't change. I think that was a great start for a 7. Was the fact that you want this fairy tale romance between the two of them, and you come back, probably was never meant to be.
I like that too.
The fact that they have a son that is
a black sheep.
Black sheep, yeah.
I'm okay with all that. Rise of Skywalker was on the other day, and I had not seen that all the way through. Oh my God, I don't know how long it had been.
It's been a minute since I've watched any of the last more recent ones through.
Rise of Skywalker is pretty bad. When it just feels like, oh, we need to wrap this up and let's put everything in plus 12 kitchen sinks. And I thought back to that first one. I thought there was a lot of promise with that, because Daisy Ridley was really charming. Mm-hmm. I remember Abby seeing that. So what, Sean, could you look up what year did Force Awakens come out? While Sean types.
2000.
This is Minute of the Apes.
Why my eyes go bad all of a sudden? It came out 2015.
2015, so...
It was 7 to 8 years ago.
Abby would have been about 12. And she was just completely taken by that character. Well, yeah. And she was like, oh my God, Rey, I want to be Rey. Because she was a strong... she was like Luke in a lot of ways. She's the innocent waif that learns to be more. They had the foundation of something. And then Rian Johnson's a great director. But I almost feel like they didn't tell him where to take it, and then it kind of created upheaval, and then they're like, how do we fix this?
Right.
And I blame that on Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams to an extent, because they were the shepherds of that.
There was a... We look at what Jon Favreau is doing with The Mandalorian specifically. Did you watch the most recent episode of Mandalorian?
Yes.
With Bo-Katan?
Yeah.
Okay. And he's rebuilding this world... after the destruction of Mandalore, and the fact that she finds the mythical beast that could potentially herald the return of Mandalore. And this is all before 7, 8, and 9 come about, right? But it's also writing what happened to the Empire did to Mandalore.
Right.
When we pick up with 7, 8, and 9, we've got such promise with Daisy Ridley and Rey that I needed something bigger than... the Empire's back kind of thing. There was no if we had gone with the Planet of the Sith and the Emperor that we see in 9 and started that sometime at 7, it would make sense why it would make sense why we need to pick up with 7, 8, 9 and get the gang back together again.
Well,
right?
Not only that, but the Empire's back thing really didn't work, because you had a rebellion that became the government. So we have the government, then you have the Empire coming back, but then you have the resistance fighting the Empire.
The term resistance, that was immediately bothered me. I was like, what are they resisting? Yet they're also on the side of the
you're
government.
You're in charge, but you're the resistance.
And I feel like the Empire should have... You could have said something about today, because the original Star Wars makes comments about the Watergate era and not trusting the government. Vietnam had happened, and if we had taken that to today, you could make
a terrorist organization.
You could make it a terrorist. You could say things like, this is how this shit is cyclical. It comes back on us because the sickness of, we don't trust the government. So this totalitarian regime starts rising up.
As obnoxious as it was to sit through episode 1 and deal with
all the politics and trade,
all the politics, we almost needed some of that at the beginning of this to understand why it was coming back.
Right.
And then having the Emperor back behind as risen from a Planet of the Sith, which is really fascinating concept that even Favreau could explore building up. It would work for why.
Let's be fair, though. The sequel trilogy is created before Favreau and Dave Filoni really get their hands on everything. I think had that occurred, I think that works, because like you, I don't think that the Sith Emperor, coming back is a bad idea. I just thought that when I go to see that 7th part, or 7th, it wasn't even 7th. What would that be?
Wait,
ninth part,
yeah.
Ninth part. And in the scroll, it tells me that the Emperor is back from wherever. I'm like, well, why is that being told to me in the scroll? Why was that not introduced as a story element?
Because you missed it when they introduced it in Fortnite, is where they actually introduced
I remember
that the
hearing
Emperor was alive, and that's where the message originally. I mean, come on, fuck off with that bullshit.
Yeah. Well, that is such horseshit because if anything, the opening crawl should have been something akin to Kylo Ren feeling lost, begins seeking out things, and just have him go into a temple and hear a voice saying something. He's like, what is that? And then find him would be a better mystery than what the fuck they did with that. Because again, when it was on the other day, I literally caught within about 2 minutes of it starting, and I just was like, how the fuck does this make sense?
The elements that I think were just so genius were the fact that yes, Leia and Han weren't able to make it work, but they still have affection for each other.
Right.
They have a son that's a black sheep. Luke tried to restart the Jedi Order and cannot do it because he is just not that person. He's not that leader.
He's not a Jedi, yeah.
Exactly. Rey as this kind of, I don't know what we are, force wielder that can kind of move between the two forces.
Maybe there doesn't have to be Jedi and Sith anymore.
Right. The fact that there's the Emperor.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
The Emperor is still technically, which would solve Luke's problem of not being able to bring the Jedi Order back. That the Emperor never really died, that there's an actual planet of the Sith that had been slowly seeding themselves in the galaxy and working with these warlords that we've introduced to in the Favreau universe, like Moff Gideon.
Right.
There's just a lot of really good things.
I mean, you got
Rey
the Knights
finding
of-
Rey getting the Millennium Falcon for herself.
The Knights of Ren.
Right.
What the fuck is that?
That was great.
But that could have been explored. That could have been something fun. There were so many elements.
I love that Ben Solo was obsessed with his grandfather.
Yeah.
And I didn't need Vader necessarily to come back, but I would love for them to lean into that a little bit more, maybe in another story,
Well, I
so
think
we can
the
kind of
burnt Vader helmet is a great thing. You know, he goes and finds that in the funeral pyre, and he brings it. I think that's a great visual element.
I was expecting Vader to rise at some point because of this, or him to put the helmet on. You know, one of those things, and become Vader himself.
Right. Well,
I don't know. It was so many good ideas. I'll go back and rewatch and see what I think about it. But it's.
I purposely stayed away from Rise of Skywalker just because I remember the Rian Johnson, which is The Last Jedi. Is that? I remember with that one that I actually groaned in the theater within minutes because you want to talk about a character. John Boyega gets the shaft.
Oh, yeah, he does.
yeah.
Very much
But
so.
do you know who else does?
Phasma.
Oscar
Isaac.
Yeah, his character is just a stupid character. Poe doesn't have any development outside of he's supposed to kind of be the Han Solo, but why?
With the quips and everything.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, whenever in Last Jedi, it was at that opening battle when he shows up and he starts making your mama jokes.
Yeah.
I was like, I am not here, and I fought with somebody like, oh, you have to let Star Wars have those moments. I'm like, no, I don't. Star Wars has never had your mama jokes. Yes, it's had bad puns.
They've had poop jokes.
That's poop jokes and your mama. Your mama is so set to our world. It is not. It was awful.
I feel like the Phasma, Finn, Poe, and
Tycho
Hux.
Rose, yeah.
I think the four of them all had really, really, really great potential. I was excited to see what they were going to do with them, and they just feel like they threw all four of them
I agree
away.
completely.
I don't know why Hux wasn't nearly as menacing as a Grand Moff Tarkin, and I kind of needed him to be that character and not just a silly foil to everybody else.
Well, I mean, and it might be the fact that it was different writers doing the movies compared to having whether you agree with it or not, George Lucas having a singular vision to tell a story.
I think that's absolutely
and
right.
he can go in and backfill. Luke and Leia obviously were not brother and sister in the first movie, and he comes back and figures that out later. But having one writer do the first movie, and the second writer come in to do the second movie, and then the third writer is the first writer who kind of threw out all the stuff the second writer did because the second writer kind of threw out all the stuff the first writer did. There's no through line of a vision.
There was a lot of really good potential when I look at some of the details of the film itself, and some great moments. But overall, I just was kind of let down.
And I know that J.J. Abrams said he just did not want to make all the sequels. I think that if he would have just stuck it through, it would have at least had a flow to it. But the problem, and I think they have righted the ship for the Star Wars world, that now with Filoni and Favreau in charge.
Yeah, and you saw that they're not doing Patty Jenkins and they're not doing Kevin Feige, and they're all their movies are out.
Well, I think that Eisner coming back into Disney probably made them all kind of
Cut back.
Let's stop all that and let's actually tell stories that people want to see. And I think that The Mandalorian is incredibly good, but it also goes back to Filoni's stuff within the Clone Wars. He's been so solid telling the story. The Bad Batch is starting to actually move along and tell me something that I'm
adding stuff to the myth.
I am so intrigued by it and what they want to tell me about.
Just get rid of Omega and I'll be fine.
Yeah, but I'm intrigued by the fact that now she's actually starting to play into it, that she's the key to everything, and there's a story to be told about the clones. I find it fascinating.
I do like what they're doing outside of the movie universe, and I wouldn't mind them kind of picking up a new movie with a new direction that doesn't involve the Skywalkers.
Yeah. They've talked about that.
I mean, that's what we're getting with Andor. I mean, it's
yeah, but they're talking about like an old Republic,
High
Republic, or whatever they're going to call it.
The High Republic is what the comic series is.
I think they're trying to bring that into the movies as well.
Like we could still go past 9 and do something in that realm.
And Favreau made some comment about that at something last week. He's like, you have to think about that. There's all this stuff that could be explored in that part of the world too.
And I hope they do. I mean, luckily we have Mandalorian, we have Andor, and we have Ahsoka Tano coming out, and hopefully we've put Boba Fett to bed.
I'm going to put something to bed too with going back to the sequel trilogies. Who are you? Rey who? Skywalker. How the fuck and why does she take on the name Skywalker? And how is that supposed to make me go, ugh? It's awful. It is.
It's fan service.
It is beyond fan service. It is. When I watched that the other day, I thought, okay, I'm gonna try, and I was like, oh my god, it's awful. It's just awful.
What is Senator Palpatine Shimi? What is
yeah.
I mean, what is she? What's your name? Rey what? Rey Shimi. What?
That you want to talk about great potential? The prequels, if they had just really, since the Emperor can create life, if they had said, it's kind of gross, but
she's Palpatine. That's it.
He created the life of Anakin within his mother, and he's and then you really draw that together, and then make the end of that. They could have made just an incredible fucking story. Okay. Anybody got anything else?
Well, we've just became the Star Wars hour.
That's okay.
I know we got to save some for next in between.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.